6 o'clock work session of the Albany City Commission. I want to begin by recognizing the Technology and Communication Department and the Public Information Office for their efforts and dedication. They have worked tirelessly to implement modifications to allow us to conduct this meeting remotely. This is, I believe, the first time this has been done, and we might have some snafus. We're working to get Commissioner Langstaff and Commissioner Fuller on the line. However, according to staff, the fault of Commissioner Langstaff and Commissioner Fuller has to be with their inability to hit the right button, and hopefully we'll get them online here in a moment.
Hey, so I can't hear anything. So is the meeting started?
Commissioner Warmington says he can't hear anything. Demetrius, Commissioner Young, I'm sorry. They also cannot hear. The commissioners can watch, Commissioner Warmington, Commissioner Young, I think that you can watch the meeting on the public access channel. Isn't that correct? Okay. You there?
Why don't you mic check?
Can I mic check, Commissioner Warmington?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you
Commissioner
hear?
Young?
I can't hear through the system. I'm hearing through another device, but I can't hear through the system.
Are you watching on the public access channel or Facebook one?
Yes, I'm here. I can't hear through the system. I'm hearing. Yes, I can hear you.
Commissioner Young, you can hear?
Yes, I can hear
Commissioner
on another
Warmington?
device. Okay.
Yeah,
You got
I'm good. I can hear.
Okay,
the audio now.
Hear them.
excellent. The first item on the agenda, we had asked that Jacqueline Jenkins, the Director of Epidemiology, appear. Is Dr. Jenkins present tonight? It appears Dr. Jenkins did not make the meeting. With that, can we proceed to the next item on the agenda? It's a request that we have a 60-day moratorium on demolition in the historic district. I'm sure everybody on the commission has received communications, mostly complaints, regarding the decision to allow the demolition of certain homes in the historic district, and what we are proposing here is a 60-day moratorium on demolition in the historic district to exclude, of course, properties which are deemed dilapidated in the municipal core. Does anyone, Mr. Davis, were you going to speak on this?
I think Paul Forgy was. I was going to bring up what your Honor just mentioned. Any final orders from the municipal court for demo or rehab would not be affected. I saw Paul a minute ago in one
Yeah,
of the slots.
He's on.
Mr. Forgy, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am. Okay, here I am.
Okay. Could we hear from you on this,
Can you hear me?
Mr. Forgy?
Okay, well, the request for a moratorium on demolitions would give staff the time to work with other departments and perhaps the public to come to some potential solutions to reduce the number of demolitions and better explain the ones that are necessary to the public. So the request for moratorium would help the staff have the time without worrying about current demolitions, although there may be few at the moment because of the current health crisis.
Any member of the commission have a question for Mr. Forgy on this?
I don't. really hard to hear.
Are there
Is
any?
Commissioner Fuller on the line? Commissioner Warmington, do you have any questions?
Yeah. So as I understand it, the list that was sent to us with the cases that are, I guess they've moved through the municipal court. Maybe they've got demo.
Back. Can you hear me?
Commissioner Warmington, if you'll ask the question, I'll ask Mr. Forgy. That might be.
Yeah. So the list that we received, those properties will continue to move forward. What we're doing is putting a moratorium on anything new.
Can I? Did
That's
you hear that,
correct.
Mr. Forgy?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay.
Anything that is an open and active code case will continue to move forward.
Any other questions?
So, yeah. So that's not just the ones we've gotten orders on. Is that ones that we've already started the process, or have had an appearance in court one time, or what is the cutoff of the ones that are moving forward? Like, where in the process did they cut off?
Well, I can't speak for code enforcement, but my understanding is that it's a moratorium on demolition, so I don't think they would stop moving their cases forward. They wouldn't do any demolitions that were outside of the court-ordered cases. They wouldn't do any demolitions outside of that, but they would continue to move their cases forward.
So the question would be, what are we going to do in the 60 days? Are we looking to do something new, a new policy? Look at what are we going to do in the 60 days?
Well, that I believe is what we would address. What we need to do differently. We would get different departments together that have a part in the demolition process, the planning department, code enforcement, city attorney's office, and meet to determine how we can make this more efficient, how we can reduce the number of demolitions, how we can make the public more aware. So it's not as controversial when it happens, and there are fewer of them.
Okay, that's all I got.
Mr. Young, you have any questions?
No questions, but just to say that I think some of the people that support the moratorium would just like to know that in this process that they are, have a space to be considered because everybody's at home, everybody's under quarantine, that, people who are into historic preservation may not have the opportunity to weigh in on some of the demolitions in the historic district. So that's why they support the moratorium.
Thank you. Commissioner Langstaff and Commissioner Fuller still hadn't dialed in, or
I think they're just not turning their cameras on.
I'm
Commissioner
here. I'm here.
Langstaff, are you there?
Can you hear me?
That's Commissioner Fuller asking, can we hear him?
excuse me, Commissioner Fuller?
Yeah.
Oh,
Commissioner Fuller's here.
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Did you have any questions for
Yeah.
Mr. Forgy?
Yes, sir. I don't have any questions. I guess my comment would be I'm a support. I live in the historic district, and I'm a supporter of historic preservation. We did a moratorium for 90 days last year, and I don't think we really. I don't know what that kind of where we went from there. So I would like to see an action plan. I'm fine with moving ahead with the moratorium, but I'd like to see an action plan of what as we come out and get some input when we come out of the moratorium to where we're going and what our plan is from there.
Did you hear that, Mr. Forgy?
Yes, sir. We intend to do that. We will have something for you.
Is Commissioner Langstaff on the phone?
I am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Did
I
you
have
any
no
questions
comment.
to Mr. Forgy?
I do not.
Thank you, Mr. Forgy.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda would be the alcohol license applications. Walter Norman, Director of License and Business Support.
Yeah. I think you need to take a vote too.
Okay, excuse me, Mr. Norman, can I, so we had two items, I thought they had been removed from the agenda, but, so we take a vote on removing it from the agenda? Oh, I'm sorry, Oh, I'm sorry, okay. The next two items, which were on the agenda for the Committee of the Whole, outsourcing function of City Attorney's Office and Municipal Court, review of services, are being tabled, at the request of Commissioner Langstaff. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes, sir. Is that all we need to do, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Do we need to make a motion to table it?
It'd be better to do a formal motion and put a date in.
I'll make a motion to table items, 2 and 1.
The city manager made a good point. You want to just, I said modify the agenda and just say you approve removing them from the agenda, and then you won't have to serve the date.
Okay.
Can we have a motion to approve amending the agenda to remove items 2 and 3, outsourcing functions to the City Attorney's Office and the review of services in the municipal court?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? In that case, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Fine.
Was that opposed, or you with it, or? I think it passes unanimously. So now, Mr. Norman, if you'd come up, please. We're gonna get better at this. People, bear with us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Aye.
I have an alcohol application from ACGBBQ LLC. The applicant is Carl Jager from 13650 Northwest 8th Avenue in Sunrise, Florida. This application is for a full consumption license. The local agent is Vicki Lewis from 3113 Great Myrtle Court. The type of business is a restaurant. It is zoned in C1. The street is an arterial street and is in Ward 2. The distance required between schools must be 200 yards and churches must be greater than 100 yards. The nearest school was Northside Elementary at 901 14th Avenue. The nearest church is Institutional First Baptist at 1410 8th Avenue. This location has been closed for renovation since 2018. It was previously Sonny's Real Pit Barbecue. This location reopened on March the 4th of 2020. The alcohol license was previously issued to Albany Foods, which was doing business as Sonny's Real Pit Barbecue. There were 4 calls for police service in the past 6 months. 2 were fire alarms, 1 was a traffic stop, and 1 was a building check. The police department has no open investigations at this location, and it has not been a drain on police resources. The applicant placed an article in the Albany Herald 10 days prior to this meeting as a notification to the general public that this application would be considered for approval. The applicant and location meets all requirements. Staff recommends approval of this alcohol license.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Any commissioner have any questions of Mr. Norman regarding this application?
Yeah, Mr. Norman, did y'all find out anything about the previous, I guess, citations, like where it was at or any details? I know it was almost 20 years ago, but.
Back in 2002, the Albany Doherty Drug Unit was actually in control of all underage alcohol sales operations, and as far as any other information on it, I do not have any more. It did register inside of GCIC.
Mr. Norman, can I
Okay,
ask-
thank you.
I thought there had to be a licensee. I had thought there had to be a local person that had the license.
They have to have a local person actually in charge of receiving the summons. The corporation still controls the license.
Okay.
So the local agent is an employee, a manager, or supervisor at the establishment.
Okay, so that is not the licensee or any,
No, sir.
okay. Thank you. Next item, Ms. Norman.
This is an alcohol license for full consumption for Lucky Break Grill and Billiards, LLC, doing business as Lucky Break Grill and Billiards. The applicant is Shannon Marie Godwin of 1504 Nams Road. The type of business is for a grill and a billiard. It is Zone C3, the arterial street, and it's in Ward 1. The distance requirements must be greater than 200 yards from a school and 100 yards from churches. The nearest school is Turner Elementary School at 200 Leonard Avenue. The nearest church is the House of Prayer by Faith at 210 Acorn Street. This location was approved for an alcohol license on January the 8th of 2019. They had extensive renovations on the interior of the building being conducted. This caused the licensee not able to open the establishment within 180 days of being issued. Therefore, the alcohol license was automatically forfeited. This licensee indicated that when they get closer to completion, they will resubmit the application. There was one call for service in the past 6 months, which was an assistant motorist. The police department has no open investigations at this location, and it has not been a drain on police resources. The applicant placed an article in Albany Herald 10 days before this meeting as notification to the general public that the application would be considered for approval. The applicant and the location meet all requirements, and staff recommends approval for this alcohol license.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Any commissioner have any questions regarding this application? There being no questions, we'll move to the next item, which is under recreation. No, I'm sorry. The next item is the assessment of the Albany Police Department. A request that we have a consultant provide a study. Chief Pursley, you going to speak to this?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Per the conversation that's been had and through correspondence is that we're bringing to the commission for discussion about having an outside consulting agency do an assessment of the Albany Police Department, primarily looking at based on recommendations of the structure of the department, along with any other processes and procedures that may need to be addressed within the department so it can better serve the community, City of Albany.
Thank you, Chief. Madam City Manager, I was thinking this would kind of go through a process where you had, is it a request for qualifications when you get somebody to do a study like this?
We could do it as an RFQ or an RFP, outlining what we want, or because of what it is, we could make it an informal process. So we don't have to do the full 30 days. We could solicit entities that we believe have the capacity to do this. So it really depends on the direction of the board.
I personally would rather you go with that RFP and just let anybody out there, and let's see what their work product is and what successes and failures any companies have had, and also, of course, what the cost of their services would anticipate to be.
Sure, whatever the board decides, we'll move forward in that direction.
Any commissioner have any questions for the chief?
I have a comment.
Commissioner Howard.
Mr. City Man, this is going, you said you can put out for RFP. We don't know a cost, what the cost figure.
We do not. It would really depend. I think we can put together a scope that's pretty comprehensive based on what I think we're looking for. I could even circulate that scope to you to make sure it's covering all the bases before we put it out. But to get a good quality product, there'll be a good cost to it, but it will be worth it.
Okay. And they will do a complete assessment of the whole police department, the APD, right?
depending on what we put in our scope, and I think that's the intent. So yes, we would incorporate that.
So you say you would provide us for a, copy of a spreadsheet that could we add or subtract or?
Sure,
Okay.
we can circulate that. It would, to get your input.
Okay, okay.
Any other commissioner have any questions, comments? And of course, at this point, we're just moving forward to,
Let's do a Mario thing.
So, hey, can I make a comment?
yes, sir.
So at our retreat, I know we talked about several things, what they call force multipliers and things. That's that's what we're looking for somebody to give us some recommendations on?
I mean,
I think,
I would think so, Commissioner, but, you know, like this term, the force multipliers and the CSOs, those are things that I, as a citizen, probably wasn't even aware of 8 months ago. I mean, you know, we're probably already doing some things, and I think that study will show us what we're doing that's successful, which is, you know, and I also think that, it's gonna say if you wanna attract and retain officers, you need to pay them more. And that's not gonna come as a surprise, but, you know, I think this is a responsible thing to do, but the city manager wanted to respond to that.
I think that we would expect them to give us some of those, recommendations as well. The nice part about this is they would, bring information from the industry on what's working somewhere else in a comparable sized city.
Yeah, I just know that our first day of the retreat, I think we spent pretty much the whole day and we batted around a bunch of different ideas. And I guess we're saying we're not moving forward with any of those ideas. We're waiting on whatever group comes to tell us.
No, I mean, no, Commissioner, I think, and I think that's what Commissioner Howard was talking about. If we see something if what our concerns are could be included in this request for, proposal. You know, this is what we want you to look at. And that's why I think this commission needs to be involved in the process before we come back and get a study and says, this doesn't answer any of our questions. I mean, that's why I think the board should be involved in basically formulating the charge for whoever does the study. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that you were clear about is pay comparison for APV, which we have done that, and we're incorporating a recommendation in our base budget that's being prepared. So we would not defer that decision pending the results of a study unless you wanted us to. I got the impression that you were very definite about incorporating an increase across the board for public safety in the police department for sworn officers. So we're building our budget with that assumption.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I remember that was the key thought from our retreat was, yes, we want that proposal in terms of the budget approval. So one thing that I remember us talking about was, I guess on a side note, I really would like to see our retreat summary retreat. I don't know who's preparing. I don't know if Gordon is doing it or Sonia, but on a side note, it's hard to remember what all we talked about. But one of the things I thought we were clear was the school zone. I'm really a big advocate for that program. I forgot, it's called Red Sky or Red Speed or Red Speed. Of things that's just on top of my head, I just remember that was, in my opinion, kind of a no-brainer to get that program going. Or are we going to wait and hold off on that for this group to either recommend it or tell us not to do it?
Now, I don't think there's any, board wants to move forward with it, I don't think it's contingent on this plan at all, no. Because I doubt somebody would come and tell you it's a bad program. If it's cutting edge and it's working elsewhere, I think that's probably one of the things that'd be in the study.
So what I would recommend is like Ms. Subban said, go ahead and act on the pay stuff we need, and I would recommend this school zone speed program to go ahead and act on and not wait for this group to tell us to do it. That I'm ready to do the school zone thing.
I mean,
I
don't see the two as being
I don't know the
exclusive.
proper name to call it.
Yeah, I don't see them as being exclusive at all. Anybody else have a question? Chief, would you like to make any comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Well, I will say it's always good to have outside experts come in just to see what you're doing and what you could do better. So I support it, sir.
We appreciate that, Chief.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, it's the proposal for the rehabilitation of Carver Park. I had mentioned to the city clerk, we had a group come to us at our last nightly meeting that had requested that Carver Park be renamed for Coach Driscoll, and I asked Ms. Talbert today if that proposal had been circulated in the community, and she advised me apparently there's some policy whereby the commissioner of the affected ward, is that right, Ms. Talbert?
And buildings.
Okay. We need to look at that, but if Commissioner Fletcher doesn't mind, I think Commissioner Young should be involved in that as well, because that park is utilized by people in both wards. Because as I understand it, the policy allows the commissioner to basically organize the committee. Is that correct?
If memory serves me, the commission for the ward is the one who would work with the city manager's office in forming some type of a committee, and then review send out some surveys to the citizens in the wards to get their comments.
Well, we're working on that. I mean, I've talked with the Driscolls, and we actually are trying to work on bringing in the private sector. I believe I talked to you a little bit about that. Everything that's going on has been put on hold.
I understand, Commissioner, but I was wanting, just to get out in the public, people who have known that place as Carver Park for their whole life, 60 years, to explain what's going on. If they have objections, certainly.
I think, and we've even talked about getting a petition going, signatures.
No, I think the support is going to be overwhelming.
It is. Yes,
ma'am.
It is.
So,
and I have no problem with Commissioner Young working with me, because he is as big a part of that as I would be, and I'll start sharing everything with them. Like I said, everything we're going through sort of put it on hold.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, this item, we see, I guess Ms. Subban has tasked the Recreation Department going to look at the site. That was really not what I had in mind, quite frankly. I thought we need to have expert go down there and look at it and find out how we could maximize use of the park. There are, in some city parks, they have these fantastic concrete, regular dimension basketball courts. I think they'd get a lot more use down there than the tennis courts. We have the pool. I think we need to get an estimate on renovating the old teen center, because I frankly think it's outlived its usefulness. We need to get some numbers. I'm speaking back when I was on the commission, there used to be, had fitness classes down there, and I don't even know if they have the classes offered anymore. We need to speak to the people in the community in South Albany who'll be using it and find out what their needs are, instead of, building some facility that it does not meet the demand or desires of the people in that community. And that's why I thought it was something a lot broader. I guess most of the members of the commission got Commissioner Warmington's email kind of highlighting the poor conditions down there at the park, and I just want to assure people we gonna do better and make some corrections. But any commission wants to speak to this? Ms. Howard.
Ms. Superintendent, in sales tax 7, didn't we allocate like $750,000 for the park?
For
I
the
mean, for the
pool.
swimming pool?
For the swimming pool, correct.
Is there any way, in a matter we want to ask him that, is that, I think that pool was built in 1954, so it got to be about 66 to 67 years old, is that not only has it outlived his time, but that area, and I can only speak for myself, I go around it, I go through it almost once or twice a week, is that there's a lot of dilapidated structure. Just to bring it up would certainly be a step in the right direction. And what I'm concerned about is that was an old neighborhood years ago, and on Holloway and so forth, out going to Slappy, it was like, known as Commissioner Arthur K. We used to, it was rags there. And a lot of those individuals that were educators, doctors, and lawyers, they have went on to the great beyond, is that for it to be safe, I think there's a lot of work that the city code enforcement need to do in that area, because the old school that is there, I think it was Old Lincoln, it's in disarray too. So for it to be attractive for the next generation, we certainly need to look at block by block and see what can we do. And I will caution you that, we certainly like to see basketball go things of that nature and all that, but as we got an email this week about parks and recreation, this generation that where parks go into neighborhood things, they have a different concept than what you and I have. They want to go out there at night and do other activities, because I think somewhere up there when you turn off East Highland, West Highland, down to Gordon and Whitney, there's about several different old stick-built apartments, need to be demolished and all that, because folks that would like to go and use the park, we're certainly going to look at the area as a whole. So that's going to be another landscape we need to look at from John.
Thank you. Any other commissioner want to speak on this item?
Yeah, I've got a few things, Mayor. Well, one of my first questions, Ms. Superintendent, I got these bid notices through my business, but I understand, I guess there are bids on the street for Bill Miller and some of the other gyms being getting bids on, I guess, renovation or something. Could you elaborate on what, I guess, you've got out bid-wise on some of the other recreation facilities right now?
Yes, we moved ahead, and we're bidding Bill Miller and Henderson's complete renovation. I believe that we're expecting to get the bid responses back in the first week of April on those. So then we'll know what the cost will be associated with those two gyms.
And aren't those two gyms a duplicate footprint of Thornton? Like they were built in the same vintage, I guess, so their renovation would mirror what we did at Thornton?
Very much. It would very much mirror what we've done at Thornton.
Okay. And so those bids are only indoor. There's nothing outdoors like parks or playgrounds or ball fields. That's just strictly gymnasium work.
The bids that went out were specifically for the gym. Interior and exterior, but the gym. Normally when we do that, we'll do landscaping and that kind of thing, but there wasn't anything that we bid for basketball court or baseball court or football field or anything like that in this particular bid process.
Okay. So my comment on Carver Park, of course, there's obviously just basic things that need to be done at the park, but in general, what that facility lacks is a gym. I spent some time with Miss Linda there, and that's a very small building that they're trying to run after-school programs out of. And so my only suggestion and some of my ideas, and I'm not a recreation expert by any means, but they just need places for the kids to get out of the building and play ball or run around. And so you take that piece of property and you take the tennis courts, which tennis needs a lot of instruction to be a viable recreation. So you kind of take tennis and say, well, maybe we don't do tennis and let's convert that little area into basketball and maybe put a roof over it. I guess you're getting into bigger improvements at this point, kind of, Mayor, like what you were talking about, versus just fixing, safety outages. Now we're getting into upgrading the entire property. So I agree. I think there's more that could be done there, even beyond just fixing the basics. And those kids that come there every afternoon, and even for the summer, and then even when they're in the summer swimming in the pool, those would just be amenities that the kids could leave the pool area and go recreate, do those sorts of things, and then come back to the pool. I got two other things about the overall block, and I think Commissioner Howard mentioned this, but I learned from Miss Linda that right next door is Lincoln Heights. Right. The old Lincoln Heights Elementary, which is not a school anymore, but I believe somebody is running a program out of there through a state grant. So I don't know how it's connected with the Doherty County school system. But she was talking about how there's a lot of duplication of services where they're kind of doing their thing, she's kind of doing her thing with the city. And again, depending on how big we want to make this project, I really think some conversation need to happen with the Doherty County school system to say, hey, what are y'all doing over on your property versus what we're doing on our property? And oh, by the way, they have a gym. They have a full, school property with everything that, it may behoove ourselves to say, hey, we're going to do one thing on that whole square that's for recreation, after school care. It can be as big as we want to be, but there are activities going on next door at Lincoln Heights, the old Lincoln Heights school. And then the last thing, this is kind of out of the box, is I know the commission has approved speed tables throughout the city. This is a piece of property that's unique in that the city owns most of the property because there's a cemetery across the street. So if we followed the process of speed tables, this would kind of get hung up and it doesn't quite fit the policy procedure. And so I was going to see what the board felt like amongst all this, that we highlight this block for speed tables, because I don't think that you're going to be able to work through the petitions and all that just because of the ownership and who owns basically, I guess the city commission is the majority owner on both sides of the street. So
well, we certainly do need to find out what my youngest son used to go to school over there. I remember they did build not a full-size gym, but it's at least a half-court gym and assembly room inside, and I don't know what they use that for. Maybe that's where they have the program. We certainly need to coordinate this with the school board. But Commissioner Young, do you have any comments?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to, echo the comments of Commissioner Fletcher in terms of working together on the renaming. I am an alumnus of Carver Park in terms of playing Pee Wee football over there. I wasn't old enough to play under Coach Driscoll, but all of those guys who came up to speak at the commission meeting, those are, gentlemen that mentored me, especially Coach Bradley from Monroe High School, and some of the other gentlemen that are there. So my mom well, we used to live, on the 400 block of Holloway, which is basically, maybe 3 blocks from that site where my mother's park is. So I'm very familiar with that recreation area. It's pretty much in that building that the mayor talked about. That building has remained unchanged, in almost my 50 years. So it does need to have something done to it, maybe even be raised and built anew. Also, I am familiar with the programs that go on in the school building over there, and they're what they call wraparound services. So yeah, there are some duplication of services that the school system is doing over there, and about recreation overall. When we're talking about, is that me? Okay. This is the thing when we're talking about recreation overall in terms of revitalizing recreation. I think we have to have a plan, a specific intentional plan where we're working with the school system. It won't do us any good to, do a new pool, do a whole new basketball court and everything if we do not tie it to the children who will be using that in the community. And I think the best way to do that is through the school system and any other programs that we're going to implement, as well as building. The programs are what make the centers go. If we don't have good programs, good people like the young lady that works over there, Chad mentioned, we'll just be building for nothing. So I hope that we'll have a comprehensive plan that not only just builds and makes new facilities, but also takes into account the programs, the instruction, and the staff that are going to make those programs go. There are we all have a lot of great ideas. I think Chad and the city manager have a similar idea in terms of the covered basketball court. I think that will go great in that area. The mayor talked about baseball fields and Monroe High. For a brief moment, I played baseball for Monroe, and that's where we played at Carver. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and we just need to come together with the ideas and make sure we're tying that to some specific outcomes.
Somebody press the pause button.
We lost Commissioner Young. Huh?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I lost Commissioner Young, but I can still see the commission room.
Sir.
Right, somebody press the pause button. That is one issue, Ms. Subidant. The gyms and centers, I don't know what type of liaison we have with the school system and their after-school program. That's something, I guess it's so obvious, but I hope we hadn't missed it. But can we
We're doing that.
get some update, and so I think that's going to address what Mr. Young was, his concerns, I believe. So could we have an update on that at some point in time? Explain how that's handled?
Sure. And can I comment on this?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
One of the things that I would like us to do as we go into the budget process, I'd mentioned to a few of you that I'd like to do budget workshops. These would be sessions where you don't take a vote, but we deep dive into a couple of subject areas in order to get clarity on what goes in the budget. And so, for example, Parks, Recreation, and Community Services could be a topic that we spend 2 hours to talk about that specific topic. because on my list right now, I have First Tee, Paul Eames, Carver, Bill Miller, Henderson, all as potential things that you would like to do. And I want to make sure that and again, to your point, we have been talking to the school system, and they provide after school, and they provide some sports programs, and we partner with them at Lockett Station. So I just, it's hard to really get a lot accomplished in a work session like this. So what I was going to propose is that we have 4 work sessions, one on parks and community services, one on public safety, blight, and code, one on utility infrastructure, which would be sewer and stormwater, and possibly utility, all kind of wrapped together. So I know that right now we're sort of stretched and things are a bit chaotic, but it would be helpful for us to really formulate a plan around recreation. I'm not suggesting that we bring in a consultant and do a long, drawn-out plan, but I think it would be good for us to really talk about and have agreement on the direction that we're to go in, if you all would be agreeable to that.
Yes, ma'am. Any other comments, questions? Next item under Public Administration and Finance Matters, electronic vehicle charging infrastructure. I had asked about this. Apparently staff made an inquiry. The Public Service Commission is, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mayor, you're doing a great job.
No.
So absolutely good evening. Mayor was spot on, and you all got a packet in your email earlier last week. But to the mayor's point, there was a couple of opportunities that were researched that had been available for electric vehicle charging stations. One, unfortunately, was open to all cities, but has since passed and closed, so we're kind of a little too late for that one. And then the second one was from the Georgia Public Service Commission, but unfortunately really was very specific to Georgia Power only. There's some caveats in there. You could participate, but they end up owning and operating everything, which is not really what I don't think we're after. What we decided to do, though, was then go back and continue to look and see what it would take to actually put in these types of charging stations here locally on our own. This is all work that we could do and provide in-house. There are 3 different types of basically charging stations for these types of vehicles. The first one is a level 1, which actually just usually comes with the vehicle when you buy it. They call that like the garage charger or whatever. And when you plug that one into the vehicle, it will take anywhere from 12 to 18 hours to charge a vehicle fully. So certainly not something you want to put on the street or anywhere. The second type is a level 2 charger, very creative name. These are about $10,000 an item, and these are put out typically into the community, but these do not provide a full charge in a quick amount of time. These provide a very healthy charge, near full charge, but they take 4 to 6 hours, so it's still a lengthy time thing. These are about $10,000 a unit. You can go to the next one, which they call a supercharger, which is the typical one where if you're ever, driving down the freeway and you pull into a rest area, and sometimes on the rest area you'll see, a couple of these charging units, or different gas stations and stuff. Sometimes they have these. And these types of chargers, they run about $40,000, $45,000 a dual unit, which means you could actually have 2 connections on it. And they will charge. They also do not charge a vehicle up fully. What they say they do is they will give a vehicle, the average electric vehicle, they'll give that about a 90-minute runtime charge, and they'll do it in about 30 minutes. So those are basically the 3 types of chargers. We could put any of those in at any location. We have the infrastructure virtually everywhere to do that. We don't necessarily own the land, but we certainly have the electrical infrastructure to put that in just about any location we would choose. So that does leave a few other items for us that would be open if you want us to continue to follow this and to consider, which would be, where would we install these things? So you have, a couple of the obvious items would be, well, if we're going to include these types of vehicles in our fleet, then we should look at the locations where these vehicles are housed overnight. So it would typically be at the fleet location, at Public Works, at Lily Pond, 401 Pine, these types of locations where we could establish, these chargers. The other type would be what we would want available for public use. And we should consider where we would want those types of charging units. And, those we would want in what I would consider high traffic areas. So maybe some downtown, maybe some at different locations along the bypass, maybe some of the mall areas. We'd have to look and see what areas would be good for those types of public use locations. And then when you go, the next kind of transition from that then is, what are you going to charge them? So we have to kind of figure out what the rate we would set for those types of infrastructure that we would put in place. Installation costs would be another thing that we'd have to consider, obviously. Again, we could do all of this work with our in-house resources. I'm very confident of that. The installation cost, though, would vary, of course, from location to location. So I hate to just kind of drop a number on you and say this is what it's going to be. But we can look into that and give some more specific ideas as it would relate to various locations. And then the last thing that would go hand in hand with this is identifying the vehicles within the city fleet that we may be able to use as alternatives to the vehicles that we're currently using today. And in your packet, there was a list of those vehicles, potential vehicles with some potential pricing.
Thank you. I really am interested in this because I don't want to be in a situation where we have the option of buying electric vehicles and then we say we don't have anywhere to charge the vehicles. And it's sort of a chicken or the egg thing, but I certainly believe it would be a benefit. There's going to be a transition, whether you believe it or not, to more and more electric vehicles in the years to come. And I think, I'm not saying it's going to be a revenue source, but if we had something, certainly we don't have any shortage of property, but if we had some charging stations and you paid with a credit card, I think there would be some revenue generated. And I just want staff to go forward and look into this, and I think the city manager wanted this on the agenda to find out whether anybody concurred with my interest in this option. Is that right, Ms. Subadin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or want to express support or opposition?
I think.
I had a question.
Is that Commissioner Fuller?
Is as far as bringing the electric vehicles into our existing fleet, I'm not real familiar with them. As far as parks go, would that be starting a whole new? Would we have to be working up a stock and inventory of parts, or are they able to use a lot of parts on a? Obviously, the engine obviously is not the same since it's the gas versus electric. But how much would we be? Would there be an investment there for a large number of parts to keep in inventory?
I guess that's a question for somebody from the fleet. It's my understanding, if I can repeat, Commissioner Fuller's question was, what kind of expense would we be incurring with the additional parts? And I don't know how many parts, what, ma'am?
Yeah, if we went with the Ford Escape and the Ford Explorer, those are consistent with the Ford fleet that we have. So, taillight parts, certain, brake parts may not be significantly different. If we went completely the opposite direction with a Nissan Leaf or a Toyota Prius, those are not vehicles that we currently have in our fleet. So we certainly can do research. I will say this, though, we do not have a lot of vehicles in our fleet that are going to fit neatly into this category, but it would be something. And so because we are kind of a decentralized operation, we would probably have to figure out where to put, we'd have to probably have more of those home type chargers for where the vehicles domicile.
I've got a question. So, Ken, I know you've already stepped away from the podium, but you were talking about when these chargers are out, let's say at the mall or Starbucks or wherever. Is it like a kiosk where they would stick their credit card in and pay a certain amount to charge for 90 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever? Is that how that works in the retail world?
Yes, sir. That's exactly the ones I'm familiar with. It functions almost exactly like a regular gas pump. You kind of pull up, insert your card, it charges. It just charges based on a kWh, instead of a price per gallon.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This is Demetrius. I'm back on via phone. And I didn't catch everything, but do we have any information in terms of those being how much of a revenue generator they would be for Albany Utilities?
We don't believe that this would be a significant revenue source for us. We certainly can do some projections, but truthfully, recovering the cost of the station could take a considerable number of kilowatt hours. So I think if we did this, we wouldn't be doing it because it's going to generate a significant amount of revenue to cover, it may over its life break even and pay for the cost of the station, but I don't believe this would be a revenue generator for us.
Well, the other side of that is you're going to have a substantial savings using electricity instead of gas, aside from the environmental advantage. But clearly, I don't see this as we propose it to. We're going to make money by selling electricity, and it'd be very speculative. As you see these different graphs in 2025, what percent of the vehicles are going to be electric vehicles, and those predictions are pretty dramatic, the difference in them. And one thing could be if gas stays low or even price falls, people are going to be less and less inclined. So that's.
So one thing, maybe whenever y'all are finishing the cost of all this, one thing I would like to see is you think about it from a pilot program. Is, let's say, maybe the Starbucks on Meredith might be, and I would like to see what would it cost the city to put like 2 kiosk charging stations at a place where you're more likely to have clients who would use it, or maybe like at Publix or something, maybe if you could put together that way we could see, is it a $30,000 investment or whatever, and that way we could see if it's, even a revenue generator.
Yeah, the purpose of the discussion is to find out what direction you want us to go in, and we'll take it from there.
I mean, I certainly see it as, I would like to have several charging stations throughout the town. I mean, you're going to see it. Some places have been doing it for years, but having a charging station primarily for city vehicles and having charging station available for citizens and people who are tourists or in town for business, two different things. But I mean, I guess what we need is just somebody to say whether or not staff should devote the time to research that. Is that right, Ms. Subadan? I think the city manager is concerned that there's only one member of this board that really has a keen interest in this, and that's what we're up at, and that's why we have it out here for discussion. But I do want to say that, 5 years from now, whoever's sitting here is going to look back, if you don't follow this option, and say, well, we should have looked into electric vehicles. We ought to be driving electric vehicles.
Well, I'll go ahead and say I don't know if you missed you, but I am one of the others that's interested in that.
I would say, I'm I'm a traditional V8 gasoline kind of person, but certainly we need to get up with the times. And we think about young people. Of course, it's all about the money. I mean, but if you think about in our city, if we've got 4 or 5 stations, charging stations at places where the young people, professional young people, hang out or work, depending on how much money it costs, it definitely sets a tone for the city, for that demographic of people that's looking for that product.
I'm okay with looking into it, having the staff research it further. I'd like to see the comparison with the electric vehicles versus gas, kind of like we saw in the hybrids. I was pretty impressed with the amount of money we were going to be saving in gas. So I'd like to see that same comparison.
Before we go spending too much staff time on it, I mean, I guess my thought is, it is early in the process. I'm not sure the demand is there. And I'd like to know what other cities have put in these charging stations that are comparable to Albany. I mean, I understand Atlanta's got them, but I mean, I'd like to see which ones they're installing. I mean, has Valdosta got them? That kind of thing. I'd like to see some city comparisons before we go spending too much time and money on it.
That's fair enough, but you remember, very few cities are gonna have a utility and have the incentive to do it themselves, but you will certainly, is that fair enough, Ms. Superintendent?
Yes, sir. We'll do the research.
Okay. Any other items?
I would just say to what Commissioner Lang's staff says, sometimes we have to just kind of lead out on certain things. I think, in terms of what we're doing right now with some of the initiatives that we have implemented with our streaming service and other things, we have to, get back into the mindset that we're going to be a leader as a city down here in Southwest Georgia. I don't understand it's kind of the mindset that says we always got to wait and look around and see what everybody else is doing. I think we used to be an innovator. We used to be a leader. We need to get back to that mindset and just, go. And I'm not saying go about it and just jump out there with it, but, just start thinking in terms of we're going to be the ones that, make the make ourselves progressive and move forward with some things and be the leader down here in Southwest Georgia.
Any other questions, comments? If I could ask staff, the city attorney, I think we voted previously to request that the local delegation introduce legislation for Daugherty County to have an elected tax commissioner. Do we act on that? No, that's for you. And then secondly, well, I don't have to have an answer now. We had discussed surrendering 4 appointments to Attica to the county commission in exchange for 4 appointments to the hospital authority. Can I find out if we ever took final action on that, Ms. Talbot? I mean, you just would you check the minutes and,
sure,
let me know, and Mr. Davis about the tax commissioner? I know we
Yes,
did.
sir, that was sent to the local delegation by regular mail and by.
Oh, okay, so
certified mail.
that action was taken, and I understand the crossover days passed and nothing's gonna happen, but if I'm gonna be here 4 years, we're gonna try it 4 times. I can assure you of that.
But we still got it on the word processor.
Okay, thank you. Any items for the next agenda? Which hour?
Mayor, Ms. Superintendent, are we live on the XTech channel?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, if you can take less than 3 minutes to bring us up to speed on the coronavirus, what the CDC is saying, what FEMA is saying, is that a lot of individuals, and we still trying to, I think the governor signed an executive order starting tonight is that way clubs and bars must be closed, and just closed completely or what?
That's been in effect. The the bars and the restaurants, no dining in's been in
No,
effect.
in the city, it has, Commissioner Fletcher, but what Commissioner Howard is, I mean, I think the governor, to speak to this, the governor, I representative from the governor's office said, when I spoke to him last week, he felt that the government felt that local governments should address this independently. And of course, some of the medical professionals are saying that this is a national problem.
Right.
You can't leave it to the states, you can't leave it to the counties, you can't leave it to the city. But the governor did enact an executive order, so what that means, Commissioner Fletcher, in Cordell, if they don't have a single confirmed case, the bars are still gonna be closed, and gatherings, it also prohibits gatherings of more than 10 people unless you can be 6 feet apart. That's the executive order, but we have had these presentations, and fortunately the people from Phoebe, representatives of Phoebe have participated in most of these morning meetings at 10 o'clock on the task force, convened by Chairman of the County Commission. Also, Dr. Charles Ruiz, who's director of the Southwest Georgia Health District, has made presentations most every day. And the one concern, a major concern at this point in time, is that Phoebe Putney is approaching capacity, and the 3 critical care units are all full of patients who have tested positive or have symptoms of COVID-19. And again, which is something of a surprise to me, but many people who have tested positive and or are believed to have the virus are being released from the hospital. The doctors make the decision that the symptoms don't justify admission. So the point there is, we've got many, many people who are out in the community who have been instructed to remain home. And Dr. Kitchens actually was quoted in the Atlanta paper in an article on Saturday morning and said, we have information that some people are not being compliant. So, but I know that's not Superintendent, do you have something to add, subtract?
I guess I would just want to let you know where we are with city employees. Probably about 30% of our city employees are now working remotely, and we'll round that out tomorrow. We've deployed quite a bit of remote technology so that employees can take phone calls from home, they can get into systems, they can answer citizen questions. Effective tomorrow, we are going to 2 lanes in the drive-through in order to not have too many people in tellers in the confined area. So we have 3 lanes, but the building is only so big. So we've gone down to 2 lanes to observe that social distancing. And we are encouraging, of course, all of our employees to be compliant with the shelter-in-place order that has been given by the mayor and the county commission. We are reducing transit service. We will still operate every weekday. We will end a little bit earlier, and we're prioritizing our paratransit to medical and grocery for the elderly and the disabled only. And so, you know, we are tailoring our activities to be consistent with what the current situation calls for. Any questions on city operations?
And you did say, but Albany, you still have the little drop-off box.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we do have employees that will go in and empty the night drop, so we can process those payments timely. And, you know, we're doing everything we can to accommodate our customers. And of course, we're encouraging people to pay online or pay through the voice response system.
And Mayor, can you emphasize the importance that this is it's not an epidemic, it's a pandemic now, and it's worldwide, that you have certain, a lot of folks, not because we're in the Bible Belt, but there's a lot of folks saying, have told me, I got Jesus, so I said, the virus got you too, so you got to have something other than that. But it appeared that folks just are not listening to what's going on. And how we get to them, I have the slightest idea, because you still see crowds or congregation of individuals in these parks until I don't know what to do or what to say to them.
Well, it is frustrating, Commissioner Howard, but, you know, I'm afraid you hear people say that it's just human nature. You don't take something like this as serious as it is until it affects you or a loved one, you know, and after that point, it's too late. So the one thing, we continually get reports and of people congregating, and but I do want to commend the faith-based community. I think they've been very understanding and very responsible. Chairman Billy Mathis of Lee County Commission was here today, and he said they have had problems in Lee County with churches who basically are inclined to just disregard the directive. So it is, I think, was it 11 confirmed cases, and
11 deaths.
yes, and the coroner, there was 6 or 7 more under suspicion. So,
150 confirmed cases as of this morning.
And we said it's 11 there in Dougherty County?
yes.
So we lead, is our county the highest, Fulton County?
I don't know, Commissioner Howard, but certainly we have the highest per capita rate of infection by.
We were the third, but we have the highest per capita
Yeah.
because of our
Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
We're the third.
Let me ask a question. And it was saying that there was 2 funerals on March the 7th, that way some individuals probably had it and was not aware of it. And I know Ms. Seward and I talked about it coming to the week of the Snicker Marathon. We had hundreds of folks in town. So it probably just could have, not saying some folks could have brought it in, but when you had many folks in town, and Seward and did say that they had no intention of canceling the marathon, right?
I think at that point, everything was rolling, you know, and at that point, I don't think we were really aware of how much this was going to spread and how fast. There is no indication that the Snicker Marathon made our situation any worse or brought anything here, but there's no real way to tell. I do believe that a number of the cases, they have been able to trace those back to the 2 funerals. I don't know that they've been able to trace them all back, but I don't know that I would say that it made our situation worse. It's hard to tell. I do know that they took a fair number of precautions with hand washing and that kind of thing.
Okay. And Mayor, since there are 3 of us up here, no, there are 4 of us up here in our 60s, there was a disgusted not on Facebook, on CNN News about what the governor of Lieutenant Governor of Texas said, BJ, Nate, the son, myself, that we had lived our time, so push us aside. So it was very disgusting, but I think that what we probably going to see, if it's not no cure and the number decrease, I think that sounds cruel and it's unusual. But I think those will be some decisions that I hope the doctor won't say senior citizens just push them aside. But, you know, we have contributed something to the community, right, BJ?
Well, yeah, and I've, you know, not going against the HEPA laws, I've asked the questions just to, you know, when we do get a death, and a lot of these ones that have passed away, they weren't in the best of conditions.
Underlying conditions.
You know, I mean, it was, and I think you're gonna, I mean, this is, we aren't socialized medicine yet. I don't think that, we're gonna get kicked to the curb. You know, and then, you know, there's new reports out that, one time we thought that the 18 to 40-year-olds really couldn't get it, but now when they get it,
Yeah.
you know, their
There's-
lungs are affected for life. But I just think that, I mean, so far, the ones that, you know, the two in the nursing homes, I mean, they haven't, and it hasn't been determined, is it old age or is it, no, it's just, you know, it's just an unfortunate thing, but we, again, common sense, distancing what we're doing,
Well,
you know, and getting word out.
There was the teleconference with this Dr. Del Rio, is that what's called, a teleconference? Can the commissioners access that?
I sent it yesterday.
Okay, okay. The city manager, I think I provided the commissioners with the link, but this Professor Del Rio at Emory University School of Medicine, epidemiologist, he gave a presentation, and it showed Commissioner Howard that, of course, those over 80, fatality rate's up around 15%, and those between 70 and 79, 8-9%. But people below 70, very few fatalities. But what the medical professionals are telling us is an adolescent can contract the virus, not have any symptoms, and then stay with grandmother or grandfather the next day, and it's, so that's one thing that, but like I say, I'm afraid most people, human nature being what it is, we're not gonna realize how serious this thing is until it affects.
And just by nature, we socialize, you know.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I do want to say I appreciate you and the city manager. The updates y'all provide, the links. I've listened to all the links, the ones you just referenced. I listened to it today while I was driving in my truck. So I do appreciate the time y'all are spending, sending us emails, keeping us up to date on what's happening, because it's very valuable for us to stay in the loop.
Can I ask, Commissioner Langstaff told me this morning he hadn't been getting the emails, and I learned Commissioner Fletcher's not getting the emails. Can I ask Commissioner Young and Fuller if they're getting them?
Yes, I am getting them.
Is Commissioner Young
Yes,
with us?
I'm getting them. Yeah, I'm getting the emails.
Okay, good. So I'll correct that with Commissioner Fletcher and Commissioner Langstaff, and I'll try to continue to update everybody so y'all know as much as I know.
Yep, that's right. Thank you for doing that.
Okay, thank y'all. And with that, would the work session be adjourned? No other items? Okay, we will stand adjourned. We're gonna take a 5-minute break, or we're gonna go forward?
I'm ready to go forward.
We go, it's take the mule to the barn.
Okay.
Me and John don't have much time. Let's roll, baby.
Is that okay with y'all, commissioners, if we go straight forward into the regular meeting?
Yes, sir. Good with
Okay.
me.
Yes. We can take a break anytime. Y'all can't see us.
If everyone could stand. And of course, as we observe a moment of silence, we should all be thinking about long-term Commissioner Tommy Postel and his family who passed away, unfortunately. Those of us who served with Mr. Postel, some for many, many years, won't be able to observe the funeral because of the measures which have been taken in place, but we just want to let Mr. Postel's family know our thoughts and prayers are with him. Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes from the previous meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved and second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is a proposal, a request to approve hiring RS&H out of Savannah, Georgia, provide consulting services. And to speak to that, Ms. Fields and Mr. Hamilton. Good evening, Ms. Fields. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Hamilton.
As we presented this at the last meeting, I really didn't bring everything I needed to do to present this today, but if you have any questions about the transit development plan, which is what this is, just let us know. Mr. Hamlin can probably answer more questions than I could.
Any commissioner have any questions for either Ms. Fields or Mr. Hamilton?
I don't.
Anyone else? I did see Ms. Fields. The recommended action, it says consider approving. It should say approving the contract, and that's the recommended action. But,
Yeah, I'll change that next time.
okay. Any other questions? I think this was discussed, and one point, just for the record, this is a federal requirement, is that right, Ms. Hamilton, every 5 years? And most of the funding is coming from the federal government. Okay. Well, with that, what would we make a motion to authorize staff to retain? What would the motion be?
Motion to approve the consulting services.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Move to approve, yeah.
Is that, was the record, is that Mayor Pro Tem or Mr. Fletcher that made the
Well,
motion?
you do it and I'll second it.
I did.
Okay.
yeah.
So for the record, Mayor Pro Tem made the motion. Mr. Fletcher seconded the motion. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next are the two alcohol licenses we had discussed earlier. And the first is an alcohol application, the alcohol application of ACG BBQ LLC for the location at 1900 North Slappy Boulevard, which we know as Sonny's Barbecue.
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Who is that? Was that Commissioner Fuller?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any, a motion and a second. Any discussion? Would you call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Ward 1,
No.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
6,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. The motion passes 6-1. The next item on the agenda is an application for an alcohol license, liquor, beer, and wine consumption at 2207 East Oglethorpe Boulevard, Lucky Break Grill and Billiard LLC. Do I hear a motion to approve? I will make a motion to approve the application. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, any discussion? There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question or discussion.
Okay, did you want Mr. Norman to come forward? Yes, Commissioner Warburton.
So I know Ms. Subban sent a floor plan of the building, and I think Mr. Norman even indicated, I guess they've already done remodeling, they've already started into the project.
Wasn't quite clear.
Is this open for business right now?
They are still doing renovation.
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay, and you said it was a technicality where they let the alcohol license lapse. It was already one for the property?
Yes, sir. They were conducting renovations, and the way the ordinance reads, if they do not open to the general public within 180 days, that the license is automatically forfeited. And that's what happened, and they said they would make application as they got closer to completion.
So this particular business there was already an alcohol or a gaming pool billiard at this location already?
Could you repeat that, please?
I think Commissioner Warburton said, was this a game room, billiard room before?
No, sir. It used to be a Fastenal building.
Fastenal.
Well, what was the previous alcohol license for?
There wasn't one previously. Oh, it's the same business that is reapplying for the alcohol license. They were approved in January last year.
Okay, so they've already come before the commission. They just didn't get their remodeling done in time.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have asked that during the working session. I apologize.
Any other questions?
I was going to ask, did they have a previous, because I remember that name, Lucky Break. Did they have a previous business somewhere?
I think Mr. Young wanted to know if Lucky Break had previously done business or had a license at another location. Is that correct, Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
No, sir. Only at this location here.
I know there's a vending business that's called Lucky Break, and you might be, thinking of that business.
Okay. And it says Lucky Break Grill. Do they meet the, the standard of being a restaurant?
They're not required to meet the standard of restaurant unless they choose to serve alcohol on Sundays. So until they get to that point in the business, no, sir, they don't have to meet any percentages.
So they're just going to be a bar and pool hall. So that's their intention?
Yes, sir, with food service.
Okay.
Can I ask a procedural question? Mr. Norman, I guess I should know the answer to this, but if an individual comes and asks for an alcohol license, I see that obviously wine costs more than consumption off premises. Does the applicant pay when he or she submits the application, or when he or she gets the license?
What they do now, they submit a money order for the amount of the license. And the moment that the license is approved by this body, then the money order is deposited into the city funds.
Okay, so this applicant didn't lose the $4,100?
No, sir.
You're still holding a $4,100 money order?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Norman. Anybody else have any questions?
One more question. I don't know if Mr. Norman knows this or not, but are anybody under 21 allowed in this place, or is it 21 and older?
Did you hear that, Commissioner Ward?
So 18 and older can get in, but I guess they have a carding, obviously before they, do you require them to put a armband on or anything at the door, or how do they prevent alcohol from being moved around? Like if somebody buys alcohol and an 18-year-old is at the table, is there any kind of marking on individuals as they come in the property?
Commissioner Warmington asked if what precautions would the business have to take to assure that someone who is underage, being under 21, is not served alcohol?
Currently in the city, we issue ABC cards to all the workers inside the establishment, and that would be a issue for the licensee to ensure that no one is being served under the age of 21, and they have to make sure that they police that, the establishment as well.
It'd be no different than a restaurant.
Don't you have classes for them to attend before they get the ABC card?
That's correct.
Did you get that answer, Commissioner Warburton?
Speaking to the mic.
I did. So we have nothing in our city code. We put it on the person that holds the license, you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct. Other than anybody who's what they call underage would be violating state law, and the person who served them would be jeopardizing his or her right to
Serve alcohol.
serve alcohol and also the license of the business. But that's just, I guess, a risk you take if you allow so-called underage people in when you serve alcohol.
And where is this located again? Because I'm having a hard time picturing it.
It's near the shopping center of Pick and Save.
Pick and save.
On the east side.
East Oglethorpe.
Oh, is that the building that's next to the to the pharmacy?
It's next to the pharmacy, and it's before you get down to the Little Caesars.
Caesar.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
And just for the record, do we have any idea when they pull the building permit, what they spent on renovations at this location?
I'm not familiar.
Okay. Any other questions?
I will also note that there's a bus, I guess what do you call a sub transfer station right behind here where the public is, a lot of public, because they transfer from the main station to the east side substation for the east side routes right behind this building.
There is a
have
transit bench behind the building where the transit buses stop to pick up passengers.
Right, but it's a little bit more than just a stop. It's the actual east side transfer station that takes a lot of people to the route, the east side route, right behind this building, next to the grocery store and the pharmacy.
Can I just say, for everybody's benefit, Commissioner Young expressed a concern, has observed that there is a transfer station in the general, not general proximity, but close to where this establishment is close to this location. Any other questions? Comments? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
No.
Yes.
Ward 2, Commissioner Fuller, are you still on?
I'm sorry. Can we start again? I think Commissioner Fletcher answered it.
That's it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So can we start again?
Okay, Ward 1,
No.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
No.
5,
Yes.
6,
No.
Mayor?
Yes. Passes 4-3. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Application is approved. The next item is our proposal to amend the charter so that we now have 3 meetings a month. We discussed that at the last work session, and that would those meetings would be on the first and third Tuesday each morning. Those would be work sessions, and we'd have a regular meeting on the 4th Tuesday night. This This is a ordinance, and, okay. So, I would make a motion, I would offer the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent to dispense with the second reading and ask for its adoption. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, I've got something, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
At the last work session, I brought up a few other changes. I don't know if this falls within your liberty as the chairman of the board to do, or if it needs to be, but I asked that we could bring back the invocation at the Thursday night meeting. I asked that we consider doing a consent type of agenda, which I know we'll have to work through how that works. But are those two things that can be done, that needs to be in the ordinance, or is that the pleasure of the mayor?
I mean, I certainly don't have a problem with it, but, I mean, I'd like to know why the commission at some point in time discontinued the invocation. I think we ought to discuss that as a separate issue. I mean, I certainly understand people of different faiths or no faith at all may, take some offense, and, but I mean, I don't think we need to discuss that now. I don't have a problem with it, Commissioner Warburton, but, I mean, I wouldn't, if I did have that right to exercise it, I wouldn't want to prohibit or require it. I mean, I think it needs to be a collective decision of the board. But we can certainly put that on the agenda if you'd like to discuss it. And that way we could get some background as to why the invocation was discontinued, if we could find that out. Is that agreeable?
Yeah, can somebody shed some light on why it was discontinued?
Sir?
Yeah, can somebody shed light on why it was discontinued?
I can answer that.
Well, I didn't hear Commissioner Warmington's question was,
Why would discontinue?
Commissioner Warmington, are you asking why it was discontinued, why the invocation was discontinued?
Yes, that's what I was asking, yeah.
Okay, well, I was thinking we could have that on the agenda, but Ms. Subadan says she's ready to answer it right now, so.
Yeah, when we changed the meeting format, the beginning of the regular meeting time became variable because sometimes the work session lasted longer than others. And for that reason, sometimes we would have somebody that would have to wait a long time for us to have the invocation at the regular meeting. So that was the primary driver of deciding to no longer do that.
Well, obviously, what I thought would be the primary reason it was discontinued had nothing to do with it. It was inconveniencing ministers. So, yeah, you know, Commissioner Warrington, if you want to ask that we put that back on, put it on the agenda, we certainly, and we can reinstate that practice if that's the will of the majority of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Ward 1?
Yes.
2? Ward 2?
Commissioner Fuller? Commissioner Fuller, unmute your line.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm unmuted. I guess my service is bad. No is my vote.
Commissioner Fuller's a no, is that
Can you
correct?
hear me?
Okay.
3?
No.
That's correct.
4?
Yes.
5?
No.
6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
4-3.
Do we have to vote on this twice? We don't have to vote on it twice because we
This is
dispensed
the
with-
regular meeting.
But I thought when you amended the charter, you had to.
This isn't a charter amendment, is it, Mr. Davis?
You don't have unanimous consent.
Code
It's a
section.
motion to,
Oh, okay, this isn't in the charter, it's just in the code, okay, so that's done, right?
Wait, no, can I offer something for the record?
Yes, ma'am.
You offered it and asked to dispense with the second reading if you had unanimous consent.
Right.
You don't have unanimous consent, so I think you have to have a second reading.
Is that correct? Okay, well then, I guess we'll put it on the next, work session. Is that correct?
No, next regular meeting.
Next regular meeting. Okay.
Hey, one point of clarification, Mayor, were you wanting, well, I guess we gotta do it one more time. It would start the following month is that when it would take place?
Yeah, so we all get paid the same thing for 2 meetings instead of 3, one more month. Yeah, could be. Next item is a recommendation or a request that SPLOST 7 funds be allocated to purchase networking core switches and management console for the Technology and Communications Department. Ms. Fields again, and Mr. Carter.
Can I suggest something? Normally, when something has been discussed at the work session, when you get to the regular meeting, somebody normally makes a motion for the resolution. It's not usual that staff comes back up to re-present since it was presented at the work session.
I was gonna have them up here if anybody had any questions for them.
Y'all good.
So, I mean,
Come on up in case anybody has any questions.
maintain social distancing.
6 foot.
Do I have a motion, or no, to approve the resolution? I guess.
I offer the resolution and ask for its adoption.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, is that Commissioner Fuller, for the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions of Mr. Carter or Ms. Field? With that, I'll apologize to Mr. Carter and Ms. Field for making them get up. Okay.
They need to exercise.
Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Ward 1?
Yes.
2?
Yes.
3?
Yes.
4? Ward 4?
Matt Fuller,
Yes.
turn your mic on.
5?
Yes.
6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Mayor votes yes. Resolution is adopted. Any items for the next work session? Any commissioner have any items for the next work session?
Mayor,
Yes.
I have one
Mayor
to,
Pro Tem.
I have one to Ms. Superdan. Ms. Superdan, is that the email we received is that the ECG can't come for next month's council?
Yes, sir.
And what about, GMA in Savannah?
They are pending. They have not made a decision yet. They're kind of watching to see how things go. They have not made a decision yet.
Okay. That's it.
Mayor, I've got one thing.
Yes, sir.
So just before the meeting, there was just a lot of discussion. I guess the APD has been, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but they've been proactive or responding to complaints. But does the resolution that you and the chairman signed, I mean, does it have the teeth that it needs to have for APD to take action, or is there something our commission needs to do in follow-up so that it's a formal ordinance or whatever? I talked to Mr. Davis a little bit about it this afternoon, but I was just going to ask you if you got what you need, or do you need us to do anything?
Well, I mean, certainly the executive order doesn't preempt this commission from taking action, and we got Mr. Hanson, who I believe is the executive director of GMA. They have drafted a proposed ordinance. I sent it around. It was emailed to me. I don't think it's quite as stringent as this shelter-in-place ordinance we have, but the question, I believe, that Commissioner Warburton had was, does the Albany Police Department have a authority to arrest people? And obviously they do. But I think the police department It's trying to just get people to comply. That's, we're not looking to take people to municipal court. We just want them to, follow the directives to protect themselves and their families and the neighbors and all the rest of us. Anything else?
So I guess the answer is you got what you need. There's nothing needed through the EMA provision in our ordinance that you and Chairman have got what you need to give APD what they need to enforce it.
I think so, but if you have any suggestions or anybody else looks at that resolution and has some suggestions or has any ideas from anybody else, I mean, basically what we did, and I think I tried to explain it to you, we basically adopted what they enacted in Athens and Clark County. And of course,
With some modifications.
yes, ma'am. So, any other questions? With that, we'll be adjourned. Good evening.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.